In the Clive Barker Podcast, longtime fans Ryan and Jose interview guests, bring you the news, and take deep dives into Barker-related stuff. In episode 469, we conclude our series discussing the Boom Studios Hellraiser comics with Bestiary 4 through 6. Before that, we get into some Jericho and Book release news. This episode is sponsored by Don Bertram's Celebrate Imagination. Don Bertram is a longtime friend of Clive and advocate of his art. But Don's unique and inspiring paintings are for sale, and over 50% of the proceeds go to the Arts and Medicine program at the Texas Children's Cancer Center. There's even a paver in Washington, D.C. representing Celebrate Imagination. We're thrilled that this worthy cause is sponsoring our podcast again this year, and we hope that you'll consider looking over his Pinterest page and commissioning a painting of your own. For commissions, Don requires no money down, and there will be no obligation on your part. You can also head over to the Etsy shop to buy one of his books, like A Chimney Sweep's Tale, Celebrate Imagination, or The Imaginaries. Follow the link in the show notes, or click on the side banner, and let's see what's new with Don Bertram today. Take a look at The Truth Behind It All, The Sun Watchers, and The Descendants on Don Bertram's Facebook page. Plus, please go take a look at his videos. First one is going over the original painting, The Bug Brothers, the Clive Barker painting that he owns. And then the next one is the 35th anniversary screening of Hellraiser, his introduction to that. So go please check those out. Of course, the best way to support this podcast is through our Patreon at patreon.com/BarkerCast589. Our subscribers will get exclusive access to content not available anywhere else, like our Collector's Corner video series, rare Barker videos, and early behind-the-scenes stuff. Plus, backers in the $10 tier will also be able to choose an episode topic, and we might mail you something once in a while, depending on your location. Our supporters also get access to the exclusive channel in our Discord server. We'll be forever grateful if you consider helping us out and subscribing to our Patreon. So what's new on Patreon? Hey, and welcome to episode 469 of the Clive Barker Podcast. And today this is possibly our final episode of the Hellraiser comics. Boom Hellraiser Part 11, Hellraiser Bestiary. We're going to be talking about numbers 4 through 6.
That's right. We already did the Hellraiser anthology issues, right?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. So back in episode 144, we talked about the Hellraiser anthology issues. There was a note in the show notes that we'd like to revisit them. So I don't know. Do we still feel that way? Do we want to go back and do it again?
I'm not opposed to it.
To kind of round out the whole thing, I guess. It's not Boom, they're not made by Boom Studios, but...
Right. I'll tell you what, though. I mean, it would be interesting for me to go back and listen to the episode that we were talking about and see if there's anything else that I want to add to it.
Yeah.
And if we still have more stuff we want to talk about, then I guess we could get back to the anthology issues. Yeah, let's work on that.
Okay. Yeah, I've got the episode and a link to it in the show notes.
All right.
But before we get into our main topic, we have a couple of things we wanted to talk about. I guess, first off, we want to thank our Patreon members and give them a shout-out. David Anderson, Eric Van de Holt, Daniel Elvin, Amanda Stewart, and I keep wondering if I should say you or not. I don't know.
I think you should skip me.
Okay.
It's technical reasons that I'm a member of our own Patreon because we still don't have enough followers to be able to have a team of people.
Yeah, you have to have like 1 million.
That sounds crazy, though.
Yeah.
But, I think we both looked into it, and that's the deal. So I ended up becoming a backer of our own podcast.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I get to participate a little more into the support of the podcast. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is.
Right. Yeah, and so thank you. And for our Patreon subscribers, we've got, you just put in there, A Story with No Title, which was a look back at a collaborative work that Clive did with a whole bunch of random people on the internet. As really in the infancy of the World Wide Web.
That's right. Yeah, back in the mid-'90s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Which was around the time, 94, 95, I think was around the time the internet was starting to open up to a bunch of people, mostly in colleges and computer labs around the world. So I was no exception.
And then Don Bertram made a video of his memories of Clive Barker's A to Z of horror. And it's kind of centered around the artwork in that. So that's something our backers should go check out. That's in our Patreon. And then your recap, a conversation with editor and author Stephen Jones, which I think that's not exclusive anymore. That was exclusive, and now I believe we have a blog post of that on our blog as well, right?
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm working on another one, but it's been such a weird week. I didn't really have the time to get that done, but I'm still working on the Hellraiser video games blog post.
Oh, yeah.
I have the day off tomorrow, so eventually I'll probably finish that tomorrow and put it up. That would be Friday as we're recording this on Thursday. So by the time you guys are listening to this episode, it's probably already up.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, right, because we're recording this on Thursday, and this will be up on Sunday. A couple of news updates, I guess, to previous news stories. First off, the Jump Tribe Advanced Reader Copy. We've learned more about that since we talked about it last. It is a book by Subterranean Press that's going to come out on March of 2025. And there's if you go to the Clive Barker Collectors Facebook page, there's a person, Sean Lynch, who made an unboxing video of the advanced reader copy. It's got the title Barker's Beanie Babies, which I'm not a big fan of that title, but I don't. Yeah. It's not to me. That's not really a good comparison.
There's just 4 of them.
There's just 4 of them that were produced, but he had that whole huge 2-painting set of like 100 of them.
Right. I don't know how many of those were adaptable to a 3D realistic plushie, but I think these plushies
designs. I think a lot of them could have been.
Sure, but I guess it's similar to Beanie Babies in that regard. But Beanie Babies tended to be random assortments of creatures, and sometimes. Yeah.
They were mostly, they're mostly like regular animals that were just like rainbow colored or whatever.
Right. And this is an entire world with a universe and names and all that stuff. So it's a little deeper than a Beanie Baby. But that's cool. Yeah. Right. So this is actually coming out.
Yes. And I contacted Subterranean Press, and they offered to send me one.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I didn't even know that.
460 plus podcast episodes about Clive Barker.
That's right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we're getting
the old press.
Good job, Brian. Good job. I'm actually just hearing about this. It's a news to me too. So that's cool. Yeah. All right. So another one. I
just did that yesterday.
I think it's great that these stories are being collected like this because it's a way of preserving the legacy stories of that might not be available anymore.
Yeah.
If you can't buy the little books that came with the little Jump Tribe creatures.
Right. Yeah. Oh, one other purchase I wanted to talk about really quick too. I've been following, just because I have a special kind of memory of it, I've been following on eBay Stephen Imhoff Jr. Has put up the copy of Hellraiser Revelations where Clive drew the little glasses on it and stuff. So I've been following that, and then Stephen contacted me about something else. So I asked him about it, and he was willing to give me a deal on it. So I'm buying it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, like Clive drew some glasses on the pinhead on the cover of that, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's I remember when Mark Miller sent me a picture of that when it first got signed, and I thought that was hilarious, and it was just something that we kind of joked about. So I don't know. To me, it was kind of nice to have that. Just
what was
because
the movie?
Of the memory, not because I want to watch that movie, which I do not.
Right. Which Hellraiser was it though? Was it like what was the name of that Hellraiser?
Revelations.
Revelations. That's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Huh.
The worst one.
Right, that's true. That's true. Very true. Okay, well, that's cool. And also it's got that weird cheapo pinhead in the cover going like,
yeah,
showing his teeth.
exactly. Yeah, that's what he drew the glasses on.
Oh, that's hilarious. Good job, Ryan. I think it's going to a good home.
Thank you. I'll post a picture of it when it arrives. He's going to be sending it media mail, so it's going to be a while. Oh, and we have an update on the, let's see, what is that? Oh, the Jericho Upscale project. So another Reddit user came on and said, hey, I'm the one who made this mod, and I didn't use your SMod thing. I did it from scratch. And he said, this guy just took my work and tried to pretend like it was it was an official project.
Oh, the plot thickens.
Yeah. So there was one guy who made the SMod that allowed people to make mods, and then this other person did this upscale project completely on his own, without using the SMods. He just did it. He made his own.
Oh, wow. His name is Ryan Pupkin.
Yeah.
Cool. So, yeah, I'm looking at the trailer for the stuff that he did on Reddit, and this is pretty fantastic.
4K trailer.
Wow. Look at that. I've never seen the game look this good before. Huh.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Maybe it's worth trying to get it to run on a modern system just to have this mod on it.
Well, you would think that they would also, as part of the mod, they would make it an executable file that could run in like a current Windows, instead of
right.
Because you can't run 4K on like a Pentium 3 or whatever. Or Pentium
right. I mean,
4 or what? Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I haven't looked into the mod at all, and I don't have the game installed in my system because although Undying is still available from GOG, Jericho is a little more complicated to get it to work.
Yeah, it's just
or to buy it
on a CD-ROM.
Yeah, and even that is kind of hard to install in like Windows 10 or 11. So, yeah, that's an issue. I need to look into that. I haven't really gotten into the this whole mod of Jericho. I guess I do have a little bit, I wouldn't say an obligation, but I should have a little bit of journalistic curiosity to try to get this to work and see if we could cover this for the podcast. I'll do the best I can.
That would be fun.
Yeah. Because it's not a game that I've actually considered going back to. But, for the sake of this and with a 4K experience, I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, I think it would be easier for you because I'm emulating Windows, so I don't really... I don't know, that just seems like an extra layer of complication.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't think this mod would work on anything like an Xbox 360, so I think it has to be on PC. But
right, yeah.
I'll see what I can do. I probably need to track down a copy, a disc copy of the game and see if I can find a way to install it.
Yep.
Well, now we know that it was Ryan Pupkin, and we got a link here to his stuff. He's describing what he did for it. So I guess this is where we start.
Yeah. And also, I don't know if you noticed, Century Guild sent out a newsletter where they said, hey, we found a bunch of extra copies of Imaginer 1 that we'll sell you for $120.
Oh, that's like the price that it was back in the day that it was released.
That's what he said. Yeah.
That's crazy. Wow.
So if people are interested, they should visit, and we'll have a link to their website, but they should go visit over there and get them before they're gone. I mean, I said a bunch, but it's not really a bunch. It can't be more than a handful. They only printed 1,000 total.
Right. So do you have where did they post about that?
It was, it's not a link because it was a email newsletter.
I see.
So, and there, I didn't see a link to, click on a website version of it. So,
okay, no problem. I think I found that, so I'll add that to the show notes now.
Oh, good. Okay,
cool. I was actually looking towards that. I need to get the second one, I guess. The second one is the one that's kind of like missing in my collection in the sense that I have the big clamshell for the number 2, but not the regular one. I think I need to jump on that if I want to be able to put all of the 8 volumes.
I used to have a couple clamshell editions, and I didn't like them as much because they hogged up extra space and they didn't fit very well with the normal editions.
Oh, yeah, they're pretty big. Yeah, they're pretty clunky.
Yeah. So I traded some of mine for regular.
Yeah, I think you did a good job on that, because that's what I'm going to do for the second one. But if you missed the first one, which has been out of print for a long time now, go to that Century Guild link, and they are charging $120 for it. So that's a good deal.
I don't know what they are on eBay now, but it's not $120.
Right. Oh, yeah. And that brings us to our next little item in the news, which is I kind of hijacked it because I'm going to interview you about this. So, Ryan, tell us a little bit about your little shed project that you've been working on.
Yeah, so it's my studio. It's going to be the podcast studio, and also I'll have like a couch and video games in there and stuff too. But this was back in like May, I think. Yeah, in May we bought a shed, which is it's built to be like a tiny house. From a technical school, right? It's like a high school for kids, like a vocational high school here in Fairbanks. Mm-hmm. So their students have built this thing over the course of 2 years with a bunch of overseeing by the instructors and stuff. So they really overbuilt it. It's really well done. And we bought it, and it's and then the trucking company just sat on it. They just kept it for almost 3 months on their property because they moved it off of the school because the school was like, we're going to start charging if you don't come and get this.
Right.
So we finally found a trucking company that would move it, but then they moved it over to their property, and then they're like, yeah, we're too busy. We've got more important customers than you, hauling stuff across the state. So
that's not very nice.
I know. Well, finally Jennifer called. She said, you know what? I want to offer him an extra $500. And I'm like, you think that's going to work? I said, I don't know. I mean, they're telling us that we're not important. And so she called him and offered him an extra $500. And then they're like, the next day they said, hey, we're going to bring this over to you today in an hour. So I just, left work early and came home, and they brought it. And so now it's sitting on our property. Talks. Yeah. And but of course they lost the keys. So I couldn't open it until today. I got a locksmith to break the old lock off.
All right. So today you stepped foot on your a little studio for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got like 12 electrical outlets in there. And it's got
oh my God.
It's got a wall sconce light and a recessed light in the ceiling. And a floodlight on the outside.
How big is it?
But yeah, it's 10 by 18. And so I'm going to have my desk kind of in the back, and I'll have a couch and like 3 TVs with a bunch of video game consoles hooked up to it. I counted, and I actually have about 20 game consoles.
And I guess for you, it's not going to be hard to know what paperwork to file and stuff because you work for the borough now. So,
yeah, the borough doesn't really have any paperwork to file. The only thing is that, the person who has my neighborhood, I told her, hey, I need you to go pick this up because I'm sort of a public figure and I don't want them to miss it and then have it become this thing where, I'm purposely keeping my own stuff off the tax rolls.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a good move. How many windows is on that thing? Because I see several windows on one side.
Yeah, I think there are 5.
All right.
Yeah, 2 on each side and then 1 in the back.
Oh, I see it. And it is just a single, the roof is
3 on one side, so I think there's 6 windows.
Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I see that. Looking at the pictures of the actual shed that you shared with us earlier, so I'm seeing the shed on that big kind of rampy trailer kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
And then this. I'm looking at pictures of your backyard, I guess.
Yeah. We there's a slab there. We poured a concrete slab, but it's kind of hard to see because of the snow and stuff.
The snow, yeah. You already have snow there.
But they had a forklift kind of a thing that they used, and they actually had loaded the shed onto the trailer backwards. But because the slab was kind of icy, they were able to just easily spin it around 180 degrees.
Hey, there you go. Silver lining.
Yeah.
I see that the roof is just kind of it's at an incline. So it's just, I mean, there's a big front-facing part with 3 windows. Then the roof kind of slopes down. And you got another 2 windows on one side and another one on each side. So that's pretty cool. What's the situation going to be like in terms of electricity? Or
I'm meeting
water?
the electrician out there tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he's going to do a site survey and figure out, what it's going to take to get it hooked up. And I want to get electric heat first because it's going to. We'll have natural gas heat in the spring, but they can't. It's too late in the season to dig up the ground and run a line over to it. So I want to get electric heat to start with. And electric heat here is really expensive because our electricity is expensive. So I'm only going to do that for one winter, and then we'll have the natural gas heat, and then the electric will just be supplemental or just turned off.
But that sounds like a little bit of a dream there, having like your own little studio. I keep joking
I used
that
to have
I'm
a whole basement apartment for a studio.
That's right. Yeah. Before you guys had to convert that for Jennifer's dad, and then eventually it became an Airbnb for our listeners. I'm sure follow that. And I keep joking that my basement office here is the Studio 2, and you got Studio 1. Now you really have a Studio 1.
Yeah.
You should hang the little sash, plastic sash that you had for like the podcast banner in there.
Yeah, you know what? I was thinking of hanging that on the desk because the desk's going to be kind of sitting out in the open with the front of it facing, towards the door. So I thought it'd be kind of neat to hang that right there on the desk.
That's a great idea.
And I'll have my Barker bookshelf behind me, behind the desk there where people can see it.
Yay. And in the winter, your books will be frozen solid and perfectly preserved.
No, well, we're going to keep the heat on.
Right.
Yeah.
I was trying to make a joke. But, you might need to have a dehumidifier in there. I'm not sure if that's going to be what the moisture situation will be inside the shed in the Alaskan winter.
Well, we have really dry weather here.
Oh, I see. Okay, when it's so cold that all the moisture gets frozen into snow. Gotcha.
Yep, and when I first moved here, when I was going to college, I would get bloody noses all the time just because the air was so dry.
So dry,
but
right?
I'm more acclimated now.
That reminds me of living.
All the time, just putting on a sweater or something, I would get shocked.
Oh, I hate that stuff. That used to happen to me all the time in Arizona. Oh, it was just terrible. Every time I got off the car or touching a doorknob, you'd be anticipating that little wincing thing like, crack. There you go. You get the little
or flipping
thing.
A light switch.
I just hate that. I don't like getting zapped. But, hey, in Ohio, it's fine. It's always kind of more, humid here. I have to have a dehumidifier running all the time in my basement along with a sump pump. But I love the basement. It's pretty comfortable right now with a big dehumidifier.
Should we get started on talking about the Boom Studios Hellraiser Bestiary 4 through 6?
Yeah. A little bit of insight from the first three issues was that the main story, right, that keeps going through the entire 6 issues, is that there was some sort of Vatican conspiracy with a group of mercenaries to acquire, I guess, control over Hell or some power because they wanted to take some of Pinhead's pins. Yeah. And so at the first issue, second, and third, we see that these mercenaries solve the box and then use that to trap Pinhead with a sigil. I'm not sure if it was the sigil of the Solitant that they use in the usual comic books. But if it was that, then they shot at him. They took out his pins with, like...
pliers?
Tools. Yeah.
Or, like a hammer.
Hammer and tools. And they left him, bleeding and broken. And then they poured some gasoline on him and set him on fire.
Yeah.
And he still survived that. Of course, the big reveal was when Pinhead manages to crawl out of the space that he was attacked. He finds out that he's in the Vatican, right?
Yeah.
He was in Italy. He was in the Vatican. And so he goes across the street to the big cathedral that's right there in Rome. And he found out that the mercenaries were haggling with the bishop there. And I think the bone of contention that they pick up here in the issue 4 is that they were just willing to pay for some pins, not all the pins, right?
Yeah. He's like, well, we got was 100 and some number of pins, so that times
I think
$100,000.
Yeah, there's like $14 million or something, and then
and they're like, oh God, no, we're not paying that. we will sell you 5. We will buy 5.
Right. So this issue, as usual, starts with at least a couple of little short stories, and then we have another part of the, the hunted.
And so this issue 4 starts with one that's illustrated by Danielle's Serra, which he's one of our favorite Hellraiser artists.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see.
It's a really strong open there with the beautiful painted art of Daniele. Yeah. And I think the story for this one is, I think it's about a stalker, right? And he says he's in the deep and portal spiritual relationship with a socio-cultural anthropologist. But I think really what he's doing is just he's just been spying on her. And one day he follows her into a building, and he discovers that this building holds many, many strange things going on inside.
Yeah. It's like is it a brothel or something? But it's full of like dominatrix type people.
Yeah, it's very S&M club or
yeah.
And so there's people with all sorts of like leashes, mouthpieces so they can't talk, people dressed in hoods and leather, and someone asks him, "Hey, you need some blinders?" And he's acting very like, oh God, well, why would my Sophie be in here? Right?
Yeah.
She sees that these people are doing all sorts of weird stuff, like getting skewered with needles, being suspended. So while he's going through this, a guy comes over to him and he asks, gives him a note, right? He says, she's waiting
for you.
Yeah. So they take him to this room, and this butler dressed in like a frilly, velvet blue jacket with a frilly shirt. He leads him to the room, and Sophie is there, right? She's completely she's naked. She's tied up, and she's in the center of the room with all these like weird knots going on. And there's a table with a box on it.
She's encouraging him to solve the puzzle while she's kind of hanging there suspended.
Right. She says, he tries to say that he's not very good at puzzles, but it looks like every time he handles the box and he twists a knob or pulls a part out, one of those knots comes undone and she becomes a little more free.
Yeah, and she says, if you solve the box, they'll let me down.
Yeah, and she says, "You've been solving this puzzle for years." I think it's about the obsession that he's had over her. Yeah. And so as soon as he continues to solve the puzzle, we see all the familiar things like the boxes opening up. A part comes up, a part twists and goes back down. All those knots get, taken away from Sophie. And she says, "Pain shows you who a person really is. And I'm about to find who you really are, Marion." And as he completes the box, we just see the hooks come out, and now she's going to see what makes him tick.
And this was written by Lela Gwen, was the writer. We just talked about Daniele Serra because we were excited to see his work again, but Lela Gwen was the writer. I really liked this one. It reminded me of the 90s comics.
Right, absolutely. I actually wrote a story back in my MySpace blog days that was kind of similar to this. It was about a guy who was a former addict that he went to a flea market and he found someone selling a box. And he looks at the box and he's like, "Okay, well, this is kind of cool, but I don't know about it." And the guy says, "Well, you want something else?" And the character is like, "Well, you mean drugs?" It's like, "Well, not drugs, something a little more sophisticated. You want to come with me to this club that I have?" And he goes back with him. So I was trying to run away from the part of like, oh, he buys a box and then he opens the box and the Cenobite come. So in this case, he sees the guy selling the boxes, but he goes with the guy to this club, and it is kind of an S&M club like this. And he does find, a room where there's an orgy that never stops. When people leave, other people go in. So it's been going on for a while. He sees like S&M stuff. And then he's led into a room where he sees a woman covered in leather straps and knots. And it's like she starts asking him to also release her, and he starts working at that. And
wow, that is really similar.
Yeah, actually, if I can pull that out from my archives, I don't know if I still have that from my MySpace blog days. But so she would keep urging him to get all those straps and knots off of her. His fingers start bleeding because he starts getting cut in like little belt buckles and all that stuff. And then as soon as he gets her loose, as soon as he finds out that, if I take this knot and this strap, everything will just fall off. And he does that. As soon as that happens, she is actually a Cenobite. She's revealed to be a Cenobite. And those straps and ropes kind of jump up at him and wrap themselves about his body. And then, she just kind of laughs at it and then tells him, welcome to hell, So I thought that was interesting when I was reading this. I was like, son of a gun. I kind of did a story that was similar to this, but
yeah.
I didn't have a Italian author painting the story for me. So this is the next best thing, I guess. I liked it a lot, too.
Yeah. The next one, And God Will Send His Angels, written by Christian Francis and Ben Meares. And we've had both of them on the podcast before, back in the days when they worked for Clive. Yeah, so this one is a little more straightforward. And it's a kind of a story that I swear to God, we've seen stories like this before, right? Where an abused person is opening a puzzle box and then they go after the abuser rather than the victim.
That's right. I think I remember an old lady with a cat. And also, like you said, there's also something about a child that opens a box. Yeah, it's something that keeps going back to because it plays with the factor of what if an innocent opens the box, right? It's what if they don't know what the box is? And that's the case for this one. This person
seems really horrible. I mean, the father in this story.
Yeah, so it's a girl called Rebecca, and her dad. She likes to hang around the attic of the house, right? And but there's stuff up there that her dad keeps telling her that she can't go into the attic. He doesn't want her to be up there, otherwise there will be hell to pay.
Yeah, but he's also drunk all the time. It seems like.
Yeah, and it seems like every time he catches her up there in the attic, he probably punishes her, or beats her up, or something. So she's praying to God to send her an angel to kill Uncle Daryl.
Oh, it's not her father. That's right. It's her uncle.
It's her uncle, yeah.
Yeah.
And says, don't you care, Jesus? Don't you love me? No, you don't. You're not even listening. Yeah. So she goes back to the attic because there's something that keeps calling at her from the attic. And what did you think about the artwork and stuff for this?
It's interesting. It's really monochromatic, right? It starts out all like orange and black, and then it switches to green and black.
Yeah, I like that part where it switches to green and black because it's like she's walking past Uncle Daryl in the living room, and he's
TV.
Yeah. There's bottles. There's like a fifth of something on his lap, and he's just got So it's like the glow of the TV. It's a little bit.
The artist is Huseyin Ozkan.
Yeah, it looks almost cartoony in parts, but I think that might be explained because it's from the point of view of a child, right? So
yeah,
that's what I took it at least, that it was from the point of view of a child.
Yeah.
So it's all fun and games, right? Until she goes to the attic and discovers a little box.
Yeah.
That she unlocks, and she gets another box from inside, which is the Hellraiser box. Of course, I mean they always make it so that anybody can open these boxes without much effort. So she does open the box, and she hears a bell, right?
Yeah, and I think another kind of impetus for this whole story is just the line, demons to some, angels to others. So they wanted to explore, like, well, in what kind of circumstance would they be like angels? And it's like, well, she prayed to Jesus to kill her uncle, and these guys come. They
do, and Pinhead says, "Why would you summon us?
Yeah.
I mean, you're an innocent. Where did you get the box?" And she's like, "It used to be my mom's." And she's like, "Well, this belongs to us. It's a tool, It's a means to summon us."
That makes you wonder if, because it's her Uncle Daryl or whatever, that makes you wonder if, if her mom is dead, if her mom was hauled off by the box and the Cenobites.
I think that's what's implied here. I think Uncle Daryl must not know what it is, but he must know that they did something. That's probably why he keeps it up there. But anyway, so one thing that Rebecca really connects with from Pinhead is that he says that the box was a means to locate souls worthy of our torments. And you can see the gears turning in Rebecca's head, and she goes like, "Oh," and Pinhead doesn't even. It's not spoken, right? But there's a moment where her expression changes, and Pinhead says, "Oh, you have seen a lot of cruelty and pain, huh?" And in the meantime, Uncle Daryl is waking up from his alcohol-induced stupor, and he's getting ready to. He sees like light.
In the attic again.
Yeah, right. He's like, "All right, I'm teach her a lesson."
Yeah,
and so, like you said, she turns to them and she says, "Please make him stop. Don't let him hurt me." And Pinhead's like, "Okay, stop your torturer. Okay, interesting." And she says, "Are you angels?" To which he replies, "To some." Cue credits. Roll the credits. Here's the name of the story. And we have such sights to show you. Just as Uncle Daryl comes up the stairs asking, "Who the fuck are you?"
Yeah, and she says, "Jesus sent them to me."
Yep. So they leave the rest of the story untold, but I guess we can all imagine what happens after that.
How many? Well, and we've seen it so many times in comics and movies and stuff where somebody gets hooked and lifted up off the ground.
It's Uncle Daryl. He's going to get hung up.
Yeah. So, hey, I had a weird. I don't understand why they didn't make like a little title for the next, for the Hunted, because the art looks like a similar coloration and stuff, and it took me a bit to realize that. Oh, wait, this is switching to the Hunted.
Yes.
In my comic, it's just like the next page. Okay, now we're doing the Hunted story, but it doesn't actually tell you that.
Yeah, I think they just do that for the next 3 issues, I guess. The only one in this issue that had like a title card was the first story called Study, and it's mostly just at the last panel.
No, and God will send us his angels has a title right up at the top too.
Oh, it does have that. Yes, you're right. Yeah. Yep. Well, I guess they were just going by the, the old heavy metal kind of format where you would have like each chapter would you flip the page and there's the next chapter of the story that you've been following. Yeah. So they do go back to the Hunted, and we're back at seeing the POV of Pinhead in the St. Peter Cathedral Basilica, St. Paul Cathedral, maybe.
He's looking up at them from the sewers, like through a little hole in the wall.
That's right. And the bishop is still arguing with the mercenary about the price for the Hellraiser pins. Yeah. Anyway, so while they're doing that, Pinhead manages to summon one of the pins that's up in the guy's hand. He tries his hardest to use the force, right, and get the little pin to kind of jump up from the hand and back into his, so he can put it in his head and get some measure of power back.
Yeah. Retrieve that which belongs to me.
That's right. Step 2, take back the power. And step 3, lay waste. That's his plan.
Yeah.
And he does that.
They didn't notice that one of the pins flew out of his hand and across the room and into the sewer.
Right. I mean, they do a close-up panel where you can see that pin is just flying out of the hand, but it's such a big close-up that makes it look almost like a baseball bat.
Yeah.
The first time I was watching this, I was like, wait, what is going on? And then I realized, that just flew out of his hand into Pinhead's hand. And that gives him like the power to, stand up and walk around less hobbled. The next page
bishop guy is like really arrogant. He says, "I am not in a position that requires haggling."
Yeah, and like you said, he's like, "We only need 5 pins," which makes us wonder what was going to be the whole thing they were going to do with the pins, because I don't think they ever explained that.
No.
But we'll get. Yeah.
they don't.
It's just a MacGuffin, I guess.
Yeah, well, and you find out later that that they have a protocol for all of this, and the whole thing. It seems like the whole thing was just ill-advised and really dumb.
Yes, but what's really funny is that we're seeing, as the mercenaries are arguing with the bishop, Pinhead crawls out of a manhole right behind them inside the church.
Yeah,
he's still smoldering, for God's sake.
Yeah.
He comes out of it. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4 panels where you see the manhole is closed, manhole opening. Pinhead comes out of manhole. Pinhead grabs something off of a table, and then somehow hobbles up behind the bishop without nobody noticing and smashes his head open with like some sort of, I don't know, some sort of metal instrument.
Is that his? I thought it was just his fist. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I think it's something, right? We never get to see what it is. But he smashes the priest, the bishop's head open. Of course, the bishop is dead. And he's like, the pins belong to me.
Yeah.
And the mercenaries immediately go like, Jesus fucking Christ, kill it. Pa, 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 pa. And he uses the bishop's dead body as a human shield. Pinhead becoming the Hell Priest becoming an action hero here.
Yeah.
And then he manages to use them as a shield, gets close to them, throws them on, and when they get hit with the body, they shoot another guy. And so there's only 2 guys left.
Because they killed their friend by accident. Yeah,
and Pinhead is going up the steps from the basement where they are up to the actual church proper. And then you see when they chase him up to the cathedral upstairs, it's the one that was painted by Michelangelo, right?
Yeah. The Sistine Chapel, right?
The Sistine Chapel, that's it. I don't know why I was forgetting the name of that.
So that's the end of issue 4. And then issue 5, we got 3 more stories.
Yeah, issue number 5. The cover is a cool cover. It's Pinhead holding the box in a room full of, I guess you could call it, stuffed animals on the walls, books, closets, shelving, and many varied items.
Isn't it supposed to be that Vatican room with all the secret stuff?
It could be, yeah.
I don't know why they would have fish and crabs and stuff on the walls, though.
Yeah.
And clams.
It's a very striking image, nonetheless.
Yeah.
I'm not into owning stuffed animals, but I think it's interesting when you go into a room and there's all these like preserved animals. So this one has 3 stories as usual. It's Don't Look, written by Michael Moreci, illustrated by Paolo Villanelli.
Yeah.
We got Folie à Deux, which people who watched the Joker 2 movie might recognize that expression. But this one is a different.
Is that like deux is 2, right?
Yeah, Folie à Deux means it's like a dance for 2. And then what else do we have? I haven't
seen either Joker movie.
Oh yeah, okay. I've seen the first one. I haven't seen the second. Folie à Deux, written by Valerie, Orazio, illustrated by Vincent Nappi. And we got The Hunted Part 5, again, Ben Meares and Mark Miller, illustrated by Carlos Magno, and colors by Matt Battaglia.
Yeah.
First story takes place in... Yeah, Don't Look. Takes place in a mental institution.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm trying. So this is like... This woman is in here because she kept seeing patterns in like text and stuff, right? She would circle words and to try to make secret messages out of them. And this guy that's visiting her is like, hey, I'm starting to see him too. And then he leaves and she's like, well, wait a minute. Then that means I'm not crazy. Why are you leaving me in here?
Well, yes, it's a strange vibe throughout this whole story, right? Because the guy, one of the doctors that works at this mental institution, he almost feels like he's a mental patient himself or someone who knows more about hell and suffering than he lets on. Because the doctor overheard him say that he was seeing those messages too. He gives him the advice of like, you should ignore because that feeling you're having and the messages you're seeing, that's probably not real. So you might want to fight it so you don't end up here. And he says,
tells her, "Don't look," which is like the title of the story.
I see these messages everywhere. And he's like, well, don't look. But that's not what he's going to do, right? He's going to keep on. And we get this interesting panel here where he's at home and there's a whole cork board on his living room full of stuff pinned to it. It's typical conspiracy theory kind of fodder. He's looking at a newspaper or a book, and you see a panel that has this text that should be on the page. Yeah. And then you have another panel with the same text, but now there's different words like Cenobites, puzzle, portal.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder whether this stuff is just what he sees, if it's just mental illness or not.
Or because hell or Cenobites are showing him that when it's not really there.
Yeah. But then I got this vibe like, oh, is this like a Dr. Chenard Institute kind of thing where it's like the Institute itself is in on all of this stuff and it's like a conduit for hell?
And it does seem later on that the Institute is maybe in hell.
Yeah, because in the middle of the night, he's frustrated. He doesn't know what these messages mean. He can't make sense of anything. But he wakes up in the middle of the night with someone destroying all of the stuff that he has put up on the corkboard and all the books, and he piled them up and he's just setting them all on fire. And
he's like, no.
He tackles the home invader and he finds out it's one of the orderlies at the hospital. So he runs out of his house. Meanwhile, of course, all the papers burning are starting to set fire to the house. He runs out of the burning house wearing nothing but shorts and somehow runs over to the mental hospital. The St. Brown Psychiatric Ward.
Across the street.
Yeah. And so he sees all the patients are like hanging out in a big central room. And it's like, what's going on? There's like lights coming out of the building. And he starts making its way to see what his friend is doing. And he sees her naked in the center of a ring trying to open up the Hellraiser box, right?
Yeah.
It's a little complicated now.
Oh, God, please, no. You have to snap out of it.
Yeah, it's a little complicated to understand exactly what exactly they were trying to go for, because they kind of bend things a little bit here, because it's like, well, we told you not to look, so I told you how to save your wife, it's his wife, I told you how to save your wife. You should have not kept looking, and now
because he looked a little bit, and then some guy came and set fire to his stuff.
Right. So that's what makes me think that it was doomed from the start, and this is almost like his own private hell. One thing I didn't really understand is why would that condemn his wife to go to hell? But because if he's the guy seeing the messages, right? I mean, if he's the guy who solved the puzzle, which he didn't really solve the puzzle, but okay, he just was frustrated, and like you said, he woke up and someone was burning all that pile of papers. What I understand out of this is that this is kind of a Dr. Caligari kind of thing, because the Cenobites take Kate, his wife. They say that we need a sacrifice for Leviathan, and they make him watch. And then it cuts to him as a patient in this hospital. Yeah. And he's just spacing out, obviously, doped up to the eyeballs. And an orderly comes in and says, oh, and here you are. Let me give you something to read. And the same doctor that we saw earlier, the creepy doctor with the long hair, says, oh, no, don't give him newspapers. They upset him too much. You wouldn't believe the things he claims the newspapers made him do. And then the kicker is they say he burnt down his own home with his wife still in it. So it leaves you with that doubt,
wondering what's real and what's not.
Is he trapped inside his own hell? Is he revisiting this and kind of like changing it in his mind to make it so the Cenobites were the ones that killed his wife? It's itself a puzzle, this story. So I guess it comes down to whatever you want to believe.
I kind of like having it a little more spelled out as far as like what's going on.
Sure. I think the next one kind of spells things out a little better, although it's also very dreamlike.
The red text is hard to read.
Oh, sure, yeah. Not the best choice there. The font is very small, too, and very condensed. But it says here it's called the Folie à Deux. The artwork is it's very stylized. It's very dark. It's about two gay couples, and they're having dinner, and I think they're just having a party. So they're eating. One of them kind of spaces out and walks out of the table while everybody's talking. And his partner is a guy that's super loud and obnoxious. Do these guys even have names?
Joel's just being an inconsiderate asshole.
I think it's – so one of the couples is Bert and another guy. And then – wait a minute. This story is a little confusing because they don't really mention the names of all the characters. So some characters go unnamed. So it's kind of hard to say that. But one couple is a guy that's very bookish with red hair and round glasses. And the other guy is wearing a blazer with a black shirt. So those are the most sophisticated couple. And then there's the other couple, which is just this guy with long hair, flannel shirt. He's kind of spacing out. Looks like he might be on drugs. And the angry older guy with the blonde hair that yells out.
The white T-shirt.
In the white T-shirt, yeah. So when this guy goes to the bathroom and the redhead guy with the round glasses goes to check up on him.
Oh, yeah.
And he sees that he's in this room in the house where he's surrounded by books. Apparently it's a collection of books called the Winding Way books. And they kind of bond over that, right? Because they both enjoyed reading these books when they were kids. Yeah.
And then as they read the books, they kind of get somehow sucked into the story, and it turns into like a it sort of
turns into a cartoon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they recite the little words. Apparently you had to recite the words on the beginning of each story. It said, "Come join me on the winding way. Come join me and don't delay." And when they go into this adventure where it looks like they're in a magic forest with like a giant crab, and they're like, "Hey, this is so much fun. What a marvelous beast." And they're, going around in, what do you call vines, like swinging vines and stuff. Yeah. And there's one guy here, one character, which is supposed to be the Hell Priest, right? It's Pinhead, but he's wearing like a
hat, which is really, really off-putting and strange to see.
Yeah, he's wearing like a conductor uniform or something.
Yeah.
So they kind of space out. They go into that world, and you see that Pinhead is watching them from a distance with binoculars, and they're cartoons having fun. And all of a sudden they snap out of it, and it's like, oh, what just happened? And, they get called like, hey, you guys are coming back for cheesecake, dessert. And then so they kind of separate. Later that night, they're in their own house, and the bookish guy with the round glasses and the red hair gets a text message from the other guy that was reading the Winding Way books. And it's a text message saying, "Have you ever played a clickety-clack? I'm outside. I need to see you." Because that's like the Winding Way rhyme mentions, have you ever played a clickety-clack?
Yeah. And
so he goes outside, and this dude is out there holding a handful of books, and he's kind of like freaking out, right? He's like, he's crying, but he's smiling. He's got his eyes bugging out. He's like, the books are talking to me, man. I can hear them in my mind. It's a station master. That's what Pinhead is supposed to be. He's a station master. It's like, he's telling me we need to climb the height without end. Climb without end, my special friend.
Yeah.
And they go back into that hallucination together. What it turns out is that the Winding Way is the puzzle. And once you do the Winding Way with a special friend and you don't delay, that's when you solve the puzzle and Pinhead takes you. So I don't know if it was a mixture of what books he had or how he placed them together, or the fact that they gave into that Winding Way thing.
Yeah. It's a strange story. Doesn't really feel like a Hellraiser story. It feels like something that was a different story that they just kind of jammed Pinhead into.
Yeah, I guess they were trying something new, trying to make different ways of people coming up with ways of summoning the Cenobites. In this case, it was this collection of books and actually the act of playing it. And basically what happens is chains come out of their mouths and kind of wrap themselves around the body of these two men in a kiss and embrace. and it just kind of shreds them to bits. And at the end, you see that the cops and the EMTs are there. It's like, oh, we'll do the best we can to separate them, but any way you slice it, you're going to get half a dozen of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah.
So that's how they
callous.
Yeah. Special friend without end. Come join me on the winding way. The end.
Yeah. Yep.
It didn't feel. I share with you the feeling that it didn't feel like a Hellraiser story. It felt more like something that would be like a short film, a short horror film where, if you go into this book world, you might never come back, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then The Hunted Part 5. So we're getting closer to the end. They're looking for Pinhead, and he's hiding, trying to.
He's hiding in the Sistine Chapel, right?
Yeah.
They said you can't hide for long, devil. And it's like, I don't intend to. And am I getting this right? It looks like Pinhead cracks one of his ribs out of his body and uses that as a knife.
Oh yeah, I guess that is what he did.
That's kind of crazy. Now that I'm seeing that, I'm like, oh, I thought he had a knife, but I never really realized that he just kind of pulls that.
Grab a table leg or something. He has to, I don't know.
Yeah, well, he's all messed up, right? I mean, he's been shot at, shredded with bullets, set on fire. He's all smoldering and stuff. So he cracks a bit of one of his ribs and uses that as a knife.
But when they were shooting at him, he was diving out of the way like he didn't want to get shot. But he's totally okay ripping a rib out of his side. Right.
I mean, now he's out of the circle, right? I mean, now he's out of the circle, and he's got at least one of his pins back, so he's got some more power. What I think is hilarious is the way that they make him be so stealthy, to the point that these mercenaries who are screaming out, "You can't get away with this. We burn whole cities to the ground around the world. We know what we're doing." And it's like, in the meantime, in the background, while he's saying this, Pinhead is picking off every one of his team members that's left, two guys, stabbing them to death with his rib. And it's okay. I didn't know that Pinhead was supposed to be super stealthy, but this is kind of ridiculous. I mean, just like he was climbing out of the manhole right in plain view of everybody. And
so then right after that, this is what I was talking about. They start shooting at him. The last guy that's alive starts shooting at him, and he's like, take a leap of faith, and he dives through this hole to get into this secret vault of the Vatican.
Right. So when the guy's shooting at him, he accidentally shoots a button that makes an altar in the chapel open up into these stairways. Right, you see that he's.
I guess I missed that part.
Yeah, you see the shooting, and then you see all the ricochet, and then snick, 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 click. It hits a button.
Oh, yeah, that totally got by me.
So a secret passage in the Sistine Chapel, and Pinhead hiding behind some pews or whatever goes like, "Wait, it can't be." I thought it was a rumor. So he finds out that this might be that rumored chapel vault where they have all these artifacts that the church has accumulated throughout time from the Inquisition until now. Mm-hmm. And he's like, there could be something in there I could use.
Yeah.
So he dives into it, right? He takes that leap of faith, like you said. He runs and jumps among the bullets and the ricochets, and he goes in there. And he lands inside this room that looks like it belongs in an Indiana Jones movie. You got Egyptian statues, you got fake demon skeletons, you've got all sorts of urns and books and artifacts. And I like the fact that he lands next to a glass case of what's supposed to be a demon skeleton, and he looks at it as clearly a fake.
Yeah.
So this, the guy with the big face tattoos and the machine gun goes in there and hi, I got you now because you can't go anywhere else other than this little room. And what do you know? Pinhead looks to the side, and one of the artifacts is a Hellraiser box. Just what he needed. Yeah. How convenient. Hello, old friend.
He says, hello, old friend. And then he says, are you ready? And the guy's like, yeah, I am. Say goodbye, demon. And I wasn't talking to you, poacher.
So basically,
addressing my associates, and then the portal opens.
It opens quite violently, Usually
that's
the
true.
wall kind of breaks apart and goes like. Yeah. This one is like the brick is flying. There's like a big explosion, and he summons a whole bunch of Cenobites inside the Sistine Chapel. So this is going to be interesting.
I don't have time for church bells and blackbirds flying around, and he's like, I need this to open fast.
We need this now. I've got a cash settlement, and I need cash now. So call JG Hellraiser 877 Hell now.
Yeah.
All right, that takes us to issue 6.
Yeah.
Which is the last one in the Bestiary series. Oh, and by the way, the whole Bestiary thing, it's the room they're in, right? That's what they call the Bestiary.
Yeah, it's all been leading up to this. We'll get to it, I guess. Yeah.
Final issue.
Yeah.
With A Place for Everything, written by Christopher Sebula and illustrated by Matt Battaglia. We got The Science of Madness, written by Christian Francis and Ben Meares, the power duo of the series, illustrated by Peter Bergling. And The Haunted Part 6, which is Ben Meares and Mark Miller, illustrated by Carlos
the final version, the final of The Hunted.
It's the final countdown.
Yeah.
All right, and we got special thanks to Gareth Barker, Vicky Barker, and Patricia Fidanza. I guess they must have contributed in some way to this one as well.
Mm-hmm. It opens up with a place for everything. It's not everything, it's everything, like set with a space in between.
Welcome to hell.
Yeah, and unfortunately in my job I have to I have people showing me their houses that are hoarders and stuff. And in fact, actually, just yesterday we were talking about a fire that broke out in this guy's house that was a hoarder, and the fire department couldn't get to the places where there was a fire because there was so much crap in the way. So his house burned a lot more than it would have if they'd been able to get around in the house.
Jeez. We don't even think about what happens to hoarders when something like that happens, because they have to deal not just with the fact that they might now be homeless. Their stuff is burned up, and also they don't have their stuff to compensate for their mental illness anymore. So it's a rough position to be in when everything is falling apart like that. We have an old lady. She's the main character of this story, and she does live in a place where everybody's looking at her. Right? She's walking down the street in her neighborhood, and she kind of feels everybody staring at her because they kind of resent her, or at least she thinks they do. She goes into her house, and it's completely blocked. Like every single hallway is full of stuff.
Well,
piles.
One thing about this story is like these people looking at her weird. It's like they should be asking where her family went, and we'll get to that, I guess, in a bit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these people sometimes are alienated from their family, also because of their mental illness. So, but you're right. There's more to come. So, I mean, if some of these stories we complain that there's not a lot to go by, this one has a lot to read, right? For a short story, this one goes on and on. So we're inside this lady's internal monologue, and she's happy. She thinks she has a house full of treasures, right? Mm-hmm. She sleeps
it really kind of goes into the mind of a hoarder, or this particular hoarder, and how she thinks of these things. They all, are like a puzzle that you piece them together, and they're all memories, and they tell the story of a life
and the trauma. Yeah,
yeah.
In her case, it's like she used to move a lot with her mother, and so she was neglected as a kid. The mother would be off somewhere every time she woke up. And then all she had to keep her company was the stuff that she accumulated. So that's where her trauma comes from, this lack of love and being a victim of neglect and being a victim
her mother wouldn't let her keep anything. She would say, whatever you can fit in a suitcase, everything else we're leaving behind.
Yeah, yeah. I could relate to this in a way because I moved here from Portugal, and everything else that I had there, I only brought 2 suitcases with me at the time. So... And I haven't really brought back a lot of stuff over the years from there because some of the stuff would just be too expensive to move here and would be just cheaper for me to buy another copy of that book than to have that be shipped from Portugal to the U.S. So when you're disconnected from the stuff that you like or from your family and your friends, you tend to get attached to stuff that you have near you. And I guess that's what this lady has. Eventually, she, as she grew up, she had a family. She had a husband, a man called John, and they had a family. But then things started falling apart because they lived in a hoarder house. They didn't have room for anything, and the neighbors would complain, and her husband would say that she was crazy and sick, and
the kids are like, well, how come you care about these things more than you care about us?
Right. It's like they never understood that these things that come into my life, they show up for a reason, they have a purpose, and that's how she sees her collection.
Yeah.
And this is another one of those stories where they were trying to play with flipping the script on the Hellraiser stuff, which is like lady finds box or person finds box, calls the Cenobites, and gets taken to hell. The Horde is her puzzle in this one, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's a really gradual sort of setup for it. It's a long story compared to these other ones that we've read, putting you through this person and understanding, her point of view.
Yeah, so as she walks around the house, reflecting on all this stuff, thinking about how much, she loves the stuff that she has, and there's a place for everything. She sees it as a perfect home. She sees it as a nest with a place for everything and everything in its place. And as she says that, she kicks a baseball on the floor into a hole in between a few other items. And for some reason, to me, that's the trigger that solves the puzzle, right? She amassed enough stuff in the right order that eventually she opened a portal to something.
So, and also through the course of this story, they talk about, her problems with her family, and they were about to pack up all their stuff and leave. And we thought, as we're reading along, or at least I did, I thought, that her family abandoned her. Now she's just here with her stuff. But it turns out they didn't abandon her. She murdered them and kind of made them objects in her collection.
She says, John always loved the living room. It seemed like the best place to leave his body. Yeah. Sally spent so much time in the bathroom. She lived in the tub as a baby, loved the water. And John Jr. loved his mama, and I keep him here with me where he's safe and sound. But we don't see any bodies, right?
Yeah, but she's saying that, that's where she keeps the body.
Yeah. She says, I made them stay so I could always remember, so I could show them I was right. You're right.
Turned them
she
into
did.
Objects.
Yeah, you're right. She did. And she says, I wanted to build a home so beautiful and wonderful that no one could ever take it away. Perfect life. And now, apparently, that is fueled by her own obsession and the puzzle of her Horde. Her house became a portal, right? So the house all of a sudden is sucking people into hell, and is chaining people, and it's like making them explode into geysers of blood.
Or else she's just not in her house anymore, and now she's in hell because she solved this puzzle.
Yeah, because that's what we see at the end. She says, it's dark and warm when I wake up. We see all her neighbors around her house get chained, and then she wakes up. Yeah, I mean, there's... I thought so.
I guess so, huh?
I thought it was, because it seems like the chains are coming out from the house, and these people are being chained outside the house.
Yeah, okay.
And there's light. It's very stylized, the artwork for this one, and there's a lot of black paint, so it's a little unclear sometimes. Mm-hmm. But when she wakes back up, she's like, well, all my stuff is scattered around, but that doesn't matter because now I have a bigger house, a whole world to fill up, one memory at a time. And she wakes up and she's in hell. All her Horde is scattered around. We see bodies chained up, but she sees this as a world to fill up with memories. So that's where we leave her.
And then our next one is The Science of Madness by Christian Francis and Ben Meares. Again, so this one, it's kind of like there's this scientist that's been asked to study the puzzle box, but don't touch it. And it's like, dude, you had one job.
And he's frustrated, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this story is basically just two sentences, Basically, it's just, Scientist studies box, can't touch it, decides to touch it, Cenobites take him to hell.
Yeah, and the person who hired him is like, hey, I told you not to do that. Now you're going to be sorry.
He's been trying everything he can with non-invasive stuff to find out what's inside the box. And he knows the box is full of like cogs and stuff, but even the x-rays won't go through it. So
yeah, and he says, but it's not heavy enough to be lined with lead. He says, and when he looks at it, it should be wood and metal, but looking at it through the microscope, he can't see anything.
Right. However, he never really opens the box. I think the puzzle that he solves is the puzzle of his curiosity, right? Because
he smashes the case and takes it out and messes with it.
Yeah, but he just grabs it and says it's nothing. It's just a music box.
Yeah.
And then we see his boss who told him, "Don't touch it. You can't touch it. You shouldn't open it." He's now chained and propped up in his chair, bleeding from every single pore in his body, and saying, "Hey, when I told you not to touch the box, I was wrong. I apologize. Your test was a success."
Yeah.
And he walks out of the lab, and every single scientist is chained up and dead, and it's like, "Oh, we're so proud of you. You did so well. Congratulations."
Yeah.
And in the meantime, and he's like, "Oh, wow, all I had to do was break the box and figure it out. It was just a music box." And so he's in this fugue state, and then it kind of goes out, and we see that he's now completely chained by the Cenobites, and they're like, he doesn't seem aware of what is happening anymore. And it's like, do we continue? And Pinhead's like, no, he's beyond any suffering we can give him anymore. But
so he just makes
shame.
him explode with the chains. Yeah,
yeah. It's such a pity when the madness negates the gifts we bring. So he was just kind of like retreating into his own mind and seeing success where there was none.
And now we have The Hunted Part 6, the final one.
The exciting finale.
Yeah, if you ever thought you wanted to see a chain wrap around an M16 and pull it away, that's right here on the first page.
That's right. And they did an intro card for this one, right? You were complaining about the last.
This is The Hunted Part 6.
Yep. So, this mercenary is in a lot of trouble because he's running away from like a whole bunch of Cenobites now. He took his gun. While this is happening, there's a camera inside that special room. So I'm assuming that there are these Vatican security.
Police. Yeah.
Yeah. And apparently they're not really police. They're dressed as priests themselves, I think. And they're like, "Oh, we need to call this. This is an emergency. Attention, this is not a drill. Initiate damnation protocol."
Yeah.
And they go to speak to, they call him Pontifex, but he's dressed in a red outfit, so I don't think he's the Pope. But they're like, "Yes, Pontifex, but do you remember that case we were talking about, the worst case scenario? It's happening right now, and we need to evacuate you from the Vatican." So while the January 6th insurrectionists are outside, they take the bishop away.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't help it. But so I think it's supposed to be the Pope. And they evacuate the Pope, and the troops go into the Vatican basement, and they try firing against all these Cenobites, and nothing's happening, of course, because Cenobites are impervious to bullets. Mm-hmm. But the Hell Priest approaches the mercenary and says, "You have something that belongs to me." And all the pins that were hidden in his pocket come out and get back on Pinhead's face. His broken arm is healed back together, and he's returned to his glory. So he says, "All right, we're finally victorious, and to the victorious go the spoils." So all the stuff in this room now belongs to the Order of the Gash. We take it all back with us, including this guy.
He takes the whole room.
Yeah, and the guy.
Yeah.
So then the next thing you see is the Cenobites are pretty happy because they're like, "Hey, look at this new decor stuff for the monastery."
Oh, look at that! There's that kid that was the one that was obsessed with solving puzzles.
Yeah,
he's in that panel on the upper left there from the earlier Hellraiser comics.
Oh,
the earlier Boom comics.
The one that had like these tentacle arms or something.
He was the kid that the dad kept buying him more and more difficult puzzles.
Oh, I see him right there.
Pinhead made him a Cenobite that would put people back together after he tore them apart.
Hey, that's a good callback. Yeah, he's a character that we've seen before.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that last night when I was reading this.
I like that good catch there, Ryan. I like that the Deep Throat Cenobite. She says, was it really necessary to bring all this stuff? He's like, well, they try to take something that belonged to me.
Yeah, entirely.
So he had to take everything that belonged to them.
Yeah.
And he's got a charming new plaything. And it's the mercenary. He's crucified in the monastery. He's hanging from a cross, and he's still kind of defiantly saying, like, "Arr."
And it's not just any cross. This is the cross.
The cross, right? From the Vatican. Yeah. They took the cross of Christ. He says, show some respect. A better man than you suffered with far more dignity upon the very cross. And he's also like, your suffering has not even yet begun.
Yeah.
So, and he turns to the Cenobite and says, so you like the new decor? And she's like, yeah, I rather like our new Bestiary.
Yeah. And yeah. So they kind of name checked the whole 6-issue series there with the last word in the whole comics.
That's right. So I thought it was kind of cool that they took all the stuff from the Vatican, including the cross. I mean, what? Yeah. That's crazy. They wanted to take his powers, so he took all of their stuff.
Yeah.
That's a great victory for the Hell Priest.
I'm taking everything you own.
Yep. And that's Bestiary. 6 issues. Cool vibe. A little bit like the old 90s comics for some of the stories. Yeah. Some of them were a little uneven, but The Hunted was a cool story. When you read all of it, if you just take away all the other stories and compile all the 6 parts of The Hunted, it's pretty decent. I mean, it might – some parts are a little like, you didn't have to make this sequence of events take like 3 or 4 pages. This could have been just like 2 or 3 panels. But they're trying to give it room, and it's pretty detailed artwork, so I love the artwork as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think overall – it seems like when they made Bestiary, they decided let's go back to the anthology format that was that worked really well during the 90s, and people have nostalgia for the old Hellraiser comics will like this, and it kind of continued on when they left Boom Studios and made their own in-house comics, the Hellraiser anthology.
I still think that the ideal way of continuing the Hellraiser story inside the Hellraiser universe is through movies. The comics are cool, but all right, we saw what happens when you try like long form, ongoing monthly thing with the whole Road Below, Heaven's Reply, all those stories. So it's interesting, but I'm not sure that I liked where they were trying to take the story and the characters in the comics. It's a good effort.
Everything had to move into like this global apocalypse kind of a scenario.
Yeah, and you could only do that so many times until you're like, okay, well, it's always going to be the apocalypse, with the Hellraiser.
Right. Yeah, because
it's always hell trying to break through and take over Earth.
And the first Hellraiser was just really about 4 people. And their problems with each other and hell and Cenobites and stuff. But, it wasn't anywhere near that kind of scale.
And when it comes to short comic book stories, like anthology-type stories, 3-4 pages, there can be some really gold nuggets in there. I mean, for sure. When you get someone like John Rossum to write with her lips for the Hellraiser comics, that is a great short story. And it's not really that long. It's just 2 or 3 pages.
Songs of Metal and Flesh by Pete Atkins, right?
Yes.
Isn't that Pete Atkins wrote that one?
He did. Yes, you're right. That's a great story, and the artwork is excellent.
Yeah.
But they can only do so much, right? Because you either try to subvert expectations, so you're going to make something else become the puzzle box, like the Horde for this old lady, or someone's obsession
with word puzzles or
puzzles in general. Or you're going to make it like the classic, right? Which is person finds box, solves box, Hellraiser Cenobites come and take him to hell.
Yeah.
What I want to see is the stuff that we were hinted at in the Hulu Hellraiser, like the different box configurations, the different choices that you could make.
Supposedly there's a sequel to that movie in the works.
That's right. And that's where I wanted to see the story of Hellraiser develop. I wanted to see like Hellraiser 4 or 5 or 6. I wanted it to be about going back into that labyrinth at least once more, see what happens there and learn more about the universe and the rules of Hellraiser and what the Cenobites are, and even bring them into stories as their own characters or anti-heroes. I wanted to see that happen more in the movies. The movies ended up becoming kind of a rehash of the same tropes and just making sequels so they can hold on to the rights to the series with the Weinstein Company and stuff. All that's now behind us, and I like to look at the future and hope that we're going to see more stuff now under the control of Clive Barker with a lot of
love
cool
the
talent.
Hulu Hellraiser movie, and it surprises me to see how much negative feedback there was on it. And when I read that stuff, I'm always like, you guys didn't see the last 6 of them,
Yeah.
I mean, how can you? Yeah, I mean, how can you even? It makes no sense to me.
I was so happy. I guess people just they get attached to actors or they get attached to certain ideas, and then they don't like that to change. But I've always been up for seeing more stuff. I mean, for one, you could tell at one point that every time a sequel came out, they were trying to introduce new Cenobites, which was a good idea. We got Cenobites like Bound, Stitch, Little Sister. Some of them I could do without, like Torso or whatever. Some Cenobites were a hit and a miss, but I love the fact that they were bringing in new Cenobites, and I want to see that happen with the next Hulu movies. Yeah,
geez, weren't there there were 8 or 9 Cenobites in that last one? There were a lot, and they had so many that they only got really quick flashes of screen time, most of them.
Right. Like the Mother Cenobite was just literally a second and a half, or the Mask Cenobite. I want to see more of those. I want to see more designs coming out, and I want to see where the story goes. I want to know if that guy who gets turned into a, Voight, I think is his name, when he gets turned into another Cenobite at the end. I would like to see, is he coming back? Is he going to be like a Chenard in the next episode, in the next movie? Or is this just going to be swept under the rug and be like, okay, well, he got turned into one of the many Cenobites, and now we can bring whatever we want for the next story. It doesn't have to be connected to the first one. I'm all for that.
That scene in where they're driving off in the van, and I forget which one of them was lying on the floor of the van and going to get pulled away by Cenobites. Yeah, it was the Asian woman, I think. Yeah, and the world kind of stretched out, and where she was getting claimed by hell, but they were driving off in the van, and it was kind of like that. To me, it had this kind of really eerie feeling, like when the floor drops out from under you in like an elevator or something. It had that. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I get it. I totally get it what you're saying, and I agree. And also, it made you feel like you couldn't escape hell, even if you're driving in a car. It's not like you could just outrun it. It'll just which is sort of a Nightmare on Elm Street thing, right? It's this hopelessness, everybody's got to fall asleep sometime. That's right. And so it does have that kind of hopelessness to it. Yeah, this inevitability that this is going to follow you wherever you go. And it's not going to give up until that scene where she's at this bridge and she sees Jamie Clayton's Hell Priest down by the river, being lit by that weird ethereal light. That is such a cool shot. I love that movie. Yeah, but that's where I would like to see the story continue, and I would like to see more about all this stuff, like the different choices that you could make, and how does that work? What is and I guess lore? One thing, I wonder if they painted themselves into a corner a little bit because it took a whole movie to explain all the different configurations, in this new mythology that they made. And so if you make a sequel, do they have to go through all that again? I think that's established. Well, but to get from point A to point F or whatever, they're going to have to open all those boxes.
Well, they don't have to explain everything at once, right? They could just explain a little bit more of something on the next movie and then leave some mystery for other movies to come in. And
that's true. And other people could have opened the other, done the other configurations, and then they're at the last two or whatever.
Yeah. But your frustration is exactly my point. It's like, I want to know more about that stuff. They show Voight's diaries and stuff and all these written things that we can pause and read. I'm like, I want to know more about that.
Yeah.
How is this affecting the real world? Are there other people who know about this? Are there secret societies? What are the Cenobites like? I want to see more of that. And I guess
I put that movie right up there with Hellraiser 1 and 2. I mean, I think it's really good.
Yeah.
And I really, really want a 4K Blu-ray of that to put on my shelf with my other Barker movies.
Right. So I guess what I was trying to say with all this is that even though I like Hellraiser comics, I'm not particularly in love with Hellraiser comics. I would prefer to see Hellraiser movies. And yeah, that's what I want to see. I want to see more Hellraiser movies.
What about that HBO TV show that never happened? Were you excited about that, or were you feeling like a little trepidatious?
I was trepidatious about it because they've been trying to do that for so long. Yeah. And if it was going to be that guy Larry Kuppen that has the rights for the TV version of Hellraiser, I don't know the first thing about him, but I know he was involved with some real turkey with like Bloodline. He basically was just a guy who just wanted a return on his investment, I guess. So it was just a consortium of people who bought the rights to Hellraiser, and he got to keep a chunk of that. So I don't even know how that.
It's a little disheartening that somebody like that doesn't really care what the product is as long as he can make money off of it. Yeah.
So I guess you're asking me if I would be okay with a TV show. I guess so, if it had a proper budget,
and the reason I ask is because I think that it would probably follow an anthology. Maybe it would be an anthology type of a deal. Who knows, right? I mean, you could also have an ongoing dramatic series.
That's true. So, until anything is announced, I guess that could all be up there. But judging from the way that some of my beloved properties don't seem to get developed because they're always like they don't have money or there's nobody there who wants to invest in that. And it's frankly becoming pretty annoying.
Or HBO got merged into something where they're like, okay, get rid of all this crap. Yeah.
Yeah, so now HBO is Max. Another end of an era. But I don't know. I want to see more. Right now, what I want to see more of is Hellraiser movies. If it has to be on Hulu, fine. Whatever Clive is working on now, I would like that to come out at some point and enjoy that. Mostly movies. That's my thing with Hellraiser. The books, great. Scarlet Gospel's awesome. Even The Toll, because it's part of the whole thing. But when it comes to comic books, I don't really feel the need to have more Hellraiser comic books in my life right now. I want more movies for sure. Yeah. But I'm sure there's people out there. Why not both? You're right. I'm just talking about my personal preference.
Yeah. Hellraiser gets the most attention out of everything that Clive Barker's done. So I don't know that there'll ever be a shortage of Hellraiser stuff. If they sort of pull back and say, okay, let's do something good instead of something to keep the rights. Now that the Weinsteins are out of it, it's a lot more hopeful, I think, a lot more positive.
Another thing I would like is I'm not good at building kits, and painting kits and stuff like that. But why aren't there more figurines or statues of Hellraiser stuff? NECA had that great line of figurines that now are becoming very, very pricey on eBay. And why aren't there any action figures or sculptures or figurines, whatever you want to call it, of like the new Hulu Hellraiser? I mean, I would buy every single one of those,
Yeah.
I don't understand why that is not being developed more.
It's true. There really was, there was no products or there was like nothing to buy. All you can do is just continue paying into Hulu. Right.
So I would like to see them invest in some merchandise for that. they're missing the boat. I mean, if you go to Etsy or Etsy or other places like that, there's already replicas of the Hulu Hellraiser box being sold, and they're not licensed. You know, I'm sure there's just people who did the best job they could to create their own boxes out of like screenshots. How many
different configurations did it change into? Is it like 4? They all started with L. 6, yeah. Laudurant and Leviathan and
Lore.
Yeah, Lore.
Yeah. Oh, all of a sudden I can't think of all 6, but
it's been a couple of years now since we've talked about that movie.
I know. I need to rewatch that stuff. Let's work on that. Let's brainstorm ideas.
Yeah, well, and especially if we're going to help them hype up the upcoming sequel.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. You guys want us to help with that? We'll be more than happy to do that.
I know. I love that movie, and
this turned into a little impromptu Hulu Hellraiser love session here.
Yeah, I think because we're starting to feel a little bit sad that that this particular Hellraiser thing we were talking about is over.
I know. I want the impetus to continue. I want the momentum with the Hellraiser franchise to keep going.
Well, we also have one more disc of the Quartet of Torment to talk about.
That's right. We'll keep adding more news and interviews as well. There's a new project that Simon Banford is involved. I need to get a look into that. Yeah. I just received a message. You might have received the same message, a trailer or telling us that there's a new project that he's involved with. So I need to get into that for the next episode of news.
Yeah.
And we're going to have more Jericho Squad. We just finished this very important race.
Yeah, and everybody went up a level. So
yay.
Level 11 or 12 in Cherdovir's case.
Nice.
Because you have the extra level of Warlock.
Right. And we'll be doing the Book Club of Blood with our first guest is going to be Eric, right?
Yeah, and that's starting next weekend. We'll be recording that.
All right, and the cat just jumped on my desk. There we go. Hey, buddy. He's asking me to go to bed because it's 11:49.
Oh, man, and you probably have to go to work tomorrow.
No, actually, tomorrow I have the day off. That's why I'm probably going to be working on that Hellraiser video game blog post.
Oh, yeah.
I will work on Saturday, though, so that's why we're recording tonight. But, keep watching good movies, keep reading good comics, and this podcast having no beginning will have no end.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope you have subscribed. You can find the Clive Barker Podcast wherever you find audio. Show notes for this episode, as well as news and reviews, can be found at our website at www.clivebarkercast.com. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial podcast and blog that is not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Inc. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans. You can chat with us on our Facebook BarkerCast listeners group, our Facebook page, Twitter, or our Discord server. The best way to support us is to buy our book, The BarkerCast Interviews, Occupy Midian, available in hardcover on Amazon and ebook on Amazon and Apple Books. Fundraiser 10 is all about Patreon this year. Become a patron to get access to exclusive stuff, pick an episode topic, and maybe even get cool stuff in the mail. You can also buy a t-shirt on our TeePublic store. Go to tpublic.com and search for BarkerCast. Leave a message for us using the SpeakPipe link on our blog. Opening and ending music generously provided by Ray Norrish.
Thanks for listening.